A few months ago, Oppo launched the Realme brand as a competitor to Xiaomi's Redmi series and practically broke the market with the pricing and the specs that you got for it. Now, it's not been a long time since the release of the Realme 1, but we already seem to have a successor in the Realme 2. The Realme 2 gets rid of the Oppo branding. It just says Realme now. There is a fingerprint scanner, dual cameras, and a notch on top. But is this enough for Realme to get you to buy this device? Well, that's what I am here to find out. Hey, this is Sri Hari from Mr. Phone, and this is our full review of the Realme 2. The design on the Realme 1 was not bad, and while they used plastic, it was designed quite sturdily. It hasn't changed a lot body-wise for the Realme 2 too. The bottom looks very similar to the Realme 1, plus it looks and sounds like you get the exact same parts too. The one small design change, apart from the obvious dual cameras and fingerprint scanner, is the frame. The Realme 1's frame is glossy plastic just like the back, whereas the Realme 2 has metal finish frame. I think this is a good design change. As I said in my previous review, glossy and matte surfaces are slippery or grippy depending on the skin type that you have. This way, in the Realme 2, we get the best of both worlds, so everyone has something to hold on to. You still get the exact same positioning for the buttons, and the SIM tray also has 3 slots here, 2 for SIM cards and 1 for a micro SD card. The Oppo branding has also been removed and it just says Realme now, which is actually one of the many signs that Realme has made to indicate that it is a separate brand. It is still plenty wide and comfortable to hold with an almost perfectly placed fingerprint scanner. It's also a different surface than the rest of the back, which makes it easier to recognize when you put your finger on it. I'd safely say it's one of the very few devices in its price range which sits at the sweet spot between solid design and good looks. Now, the display on the Realme 1 was already quite impressive, and apart from the fact that the brightness was slightly on the lower side, I think it was a high quality display. The Realme 2's display, well, there is a notch on top. Let's get that out of the way first. Now, the thing that made Realme 1 so good was that it was a Full HD Plus panel. The Realme 2 has actually downgraded on the display and now is a lower resolution HD Plus screen. Not just that, according to me, from what I've seen, I think they've used an inferior quality display. It just doesn't feel like a good display compared to the Realme 1, which feels premium in quality. That said, the Realme 1 has cooler color temperature compared to the more color accurate whites on the Realme 2. The bezels are slightly smaller on the Realme 2, and not just on the top, which are obvious, but also the bottom chin is bigger on the Realme 1. The Realme 2's display also has an unappealing color shift to yellowish tint, which is also one of the ways I realized that there was a lower quality panel being used. Now, it's clear that to get the notch, the smaller bezels, and still keep the cost same, Realme chose to use a lower quality panel. And that's not entirely their fault. I think people really want a notched display bad enough to live with these compromises, which is sad for me, but I guess that's the reality. That said, the Realme 2 does have slightly more saturated colors and way better brightness than the Realme 1's display. I do have certain complaints with the display that you obviously heard, but all in all, I don't think it's really a downgrade for most people. Now, coming to the software, the Realme 2, just like the Realme 1, runs ColorOS 5.1 with small tweaks, and all of these tweaks mostly are visual tweaks to just make it look slightly different than the Realme 1. For starters, the home screen comes with a clock widget on top and the search bar on the bottom compared to what the Realme 1 looks like, where you have the search bar on top and no clock widget. The smart feed on the left also looks a little different just in terms of look, not in functionality. And this is again a theme you'll see throughout the UI. The apps haven't really changed on the inside, but they all just have refreshed icons, which honestly doesn't make a difference for me. I think this is one of those changes that has been made by Realme to separate their software from Oppo software to at least look like a different software, although they are not doing a good job at that. They also carry Android 8.1 below the ColorOS skin, which actually makes both of them look exactly the same in almost all cases when it comes to the software. Talking about the differences, both of them have navigation gestures, but when you go to the recent screen, the Realme 2 has obviously the cards shaped like the display of the Realme 2, and the Realme 1 has the cards shaped like the display of the Realme 1, although there is one tiny difference that I think you can see here too, which is that the Realme 1 shows the RAM information of how much it's left, how much is being used, but the Realme 2 doesn't for some reason. The quick settings panel is also black on the Realme 1 compared to a white clad panel on the Realme 2. Even the toggles also show active status in different ways. So all the changes we saw again were only visual changes. Now, getting into settings, everything looks pretty much untouched. You have the option to change color temperatures in the settings. You also have the night shade for eye protection. The Realme 2 seems to have opted out of lock screen magazine, which is where you get new wallpapers every day and some information on it. I don't mind it, but I know a lot of people like to have that on their phones, and this is something that isn't present on the Realme 2. There is also a dedicated do not disturb mode called the quiet mode. Now moving forward, we see a security tab that I had never before delved deeply into, but this time I did, and I must say I am surprised. It is one of the most extensive and feature-packed softwares that I've seen. So the first tab is permissions. Here you obviously set permissions individually. You can go literally app by app and set permissions, or you can go permission by permission and set whatever apps you want to involved in that or not. So you can do it either way. You can either go to all the different apps and see whatever permissions they've got, or you can go and take a look at permissions and see what all apps have gotten that permission. So basically, it's a dumb proof setting, and it's basically good that you're getting control here. Now, there are a few features that the Realme 2 has to take advantage of that notch, which I like the full screen multitasking toggle, where whenever you are in an app that has full screen, you can quickly interact with apps in a floating window without disturbing whatever's going on in the background. There are limited apps and features right now, but they mostly seem helpful, and this is something you also saw in the Oppo F7 and now the Oppo F9, but yes, seeing it on the Realme 2, I am really impressed. Now, one of the very interesting features that I saw in the settings tab was protect personal information. But I think you've been through a situation where you have downloaded an app and it's asking for a few permissions that it doesn't really need, but if you don't give those permissions, the app doesn't work. So for that, you obviously have to give up some of your personal information. This app helps you do that without having to reveal your information. So what this does is it creates dummy call logs, it creates dummy contacts, it creates dummy messages, dummy events, so that all these apps can get access to your phone, but only get access to those dummy accounts or those dummy numbers. That way, all those apps will work and none of your personal information is revealed to these apps. So this is a really good security feature. Now we have payment protection, which basically makes sure that your payments are as secure as possible by making sure that the checklist is followed to the T. The blacklist and whitelist sits under anti-harassment or blocking, which makes it sound more secure than it is. You also have fake station blocking. Fake base stations, or pseudo base stations as they're popularly known, are basically, as the name suggests, fake network hubs imitating or mimicking your cellular towers and sending messages and calls which would not be allowed through your cellular towers because they're illegal or malicious. They're illegally used and are usually used where you get those messages where you won an iPhone, you won $5 million or 5 lakh rupees or 50 lakh rupees, or you're gonna get 200,000 subscribers in a few days. I know, it's all a scam. Many of us know enough to delete or ignore them, but most out there don't, and this setting, which is on by default, helps them avoid falling into that trap. You also get inbuilt app log, kids log, and a private space for your pictures, apps, documents, etc., which can actually be logged and unlocked using your fingerprint or your face, or both. The face unlock is better on the Realme 1 only for the reason that the Realme 1 opens up quite quickly and faster than the Realme 2, and for some odd reason both of them open with eyes closed, but you have the option to turn that off in the settings, which is weird. Other than that, the Realme 1 has Oppo Cloud, which the Realme 2 lacks, again probably because they're trying to establish it as a completely different sub-brand. Also, there's also Game Acceleration rebranded as GameSpace, so basically just the same software with different masks. And probably I'm pretty sure that the Realme 1 is also slowly going to start looking like the Realme 2 and will get rid of those Oppo trademarks. Coming to performance, the Realme 2 uses a Snapdragon 450. Well, that's a bummer. This news has probably upset most of you people purely because you know how good the Helio P60 chipset was, and also because there are so many better processors at this price. Well, how bad is it? It's not bad. I haven't had much problem in day-to-day use, but clearly the Realme 1 feels snappier to me. It opens up apps faster. The UI also seems very snappy. This is also one of those feature-packed UI, so the slower processor obviously shows. It's neither been very bad nor very good. Gaming again wasn't a breeze. Smaller games like Shadow Fight and Alto's Odyssey, although took a long time to load, they played very smoothly. On the other hand, heavier games like PUBG only had stutters. I was only playing in between stutters. It was nowhere close to a good experience. Buttons would take time to respond. There would be a lot of stutters when I'm moving around when there's rendering going on. The Realme 1 2 did not enjoy a good gaming experience, but it was just way better than what the Realme 2 is showing me. The Antutu score on the Realme 2 is 77,000. You know what the Antutu score of the Realme 1 was? it was 139,000, almost double of what the Realme 2 scores, which is crazy if you think about it. Realme 2 is the newer device and it's almost half as powerful as the Realme 1. I understand that you had to downgrade the processor in order to give space for other parts like a notch display or a fingerprint scanner or a dual camera to fit in, but when the downgrade is this significant, it's really hard not to complain. Talking about call quality, finally, all the calls I made with it sounded good, and while it has a slightly smaller earpiece than the Realme 1, it all sounds the same. You also get a standard headphone jack which puts out standard audio, not too great, not. Now talking about cameras are the second area where the Realme 2 is an upgrade. This time around we have dual cameras which include a 13 megapixel f2.2 primary lens plus a 2 megapixel f2.4 lens for depth sensing. The front camera is an 8 megapixel lens with an f2.2 aperture, which is actually a bigger aperture than the back camera. The images do look sharper, clearly look sharper, and also actually have more details in them. It's not just over sharpening. The dynamic range is good, the details are good, the colors are also very good looking on the Realme 2 compared to the Realme 1. The low light still looks like a patchy game where the Realme 1 images look slightly better in a lot of cases, but the rest of the pictures are all better on the Realme 2. So definitely there has been an upgrade here and it's showing. The battery life on this is awesome. I mean, the Realme 1 already had a big 3410 mAh battery, and now it adds about 800 mAh to it at 4320 mAh, which they've achieved without really making the phone feel heavier or thicker. I don't know how, but I'm happy. The battery life looks good and not worrisome at all. The screen has definitely become larger, but since the resolution has dropped, the battery life should be just fine. The charging time isn't bad too. My Realme 2 charged from 0 to 100 in nearly 2 hours, 30 minutes, 15 minutes give or take. But I think the battery charging is also pretty good. So coming to the battery, I think it's a very clear upgrade from the Realme 1. So coming to the conclusion, is the Realme 2 worth buying? Well, I know a lot of you are very angry and very disappointed that the Realme 2 has a downgraded Snapdragon 450 chipset compared to a very capable Helio P60 in the Realme 1. And I understand where that disappointment comes from, but what we need to realize here is that Realme is dividing its series here. First, there was only a Realme 1, only one phone. Now they've already announced that there's going to be a Realme 2, you saw a review of, and there's also going to be a Realme 2 Pro. Now this Realme 2 Pro will obviously have beefier specs and will probably be the successor to the Realme 1 that you guys have been waiting for. So the Realme 2 is obviously a downgraded version at the same price. And I know you people are smart enough to understand that all the downgrades that have been made from the Realme 1 have been compensated in all the different upgrades that have been made with the fingerprint scanner, the dual cameras, the notch display, and almost 800 mAh more battery. So you get a 4203 mAh battery in this. So contrary to probably what all the consumers and most reviewers are saying, I think the Realme 2 has been priced pretty well. They haven't increased the price from the Realme 1. The Realme 2 Pro is the successor that you are looking for probably. But for all those people who think that the Realme 2 is actually a good buy for this price, let me know in the comment section. I think that too. So with that, we come to an end of this review. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Tell me if you don't agree with the things I said. Tell me if you agree with the things I said in the comment section below. I'll be happy to jump down and talk to you about this. With that, we come to an end of this. Thank you so much for watching. This is Sri Hari from Mr. Phone, and I'll catch you very soon in the next video.